I'm Amanda Meeker. I'm Executive Director here at the museum, and I want to thank everybody for being part of our event today. If you haven't already, be sure to visit America at the Crossroads, a Guitar in a Changing Nation, which is up on the second floor of the museum. A traveling exhibit from the National Guitar Museum features 40 instruments that tell the story of the guitar's evolution through history. The exhibit will be here through the summer, through September 1st. And our presentation of the exhibit also features guitars played by Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, and other greats. Plus displays highlighting California guitar makers, including the Santa Cruz Guitar Company, whose founder, Richard Hoover, we'll be hearing from in just a moment. Richard co-founded Santa Cruz Guitar Company in 1976 after about 4 years of learning how to make guitars. Since then, he has built the company into one of the most revered steel string makers in the world, known for its handcrafted acoustic guitars and its dedication to sustainability. Today, we'll get to learn from Richard about that history and hear what makes handmade guitars so special. Few notes, housekeeping notes before we get started. Restrooms are through those doors and to the left. Don't miss guitar performances by Ian Santiano right after this presentation and by Denora, who is back there, I think, at 2:20. And in between, DJ Tiny is going to be spinning some dad rock in honor of Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to any fathers out there. Pizza, beer, soft drinks available in the courtyard. Please note beverage service ends at 4 and the museum closes at 5. Thank you again for coming. Enjoy the day. And now, please welcome a national treasure, Richard Hoover.
After that, I hate to open my mouth and wreck it. Thank you so much, Amanda. That was really kind. What you see behind me is the guitars that we make, and that's my vehicle. What I do is shamelessly try to make the world a better place. Music in itself is a beautiful form of communication. It's an international language, and it breaks political, ethnic barriers. It's a beautiful thing to watch how it works. And shamelessly, I'd like to make the world a better place. And I couldn't have a better job than guitar making. So I've been at this for 55 years. I've got an old Labrador that's turning 15, and I drive a 60-year-old truck. So I've made the mistake so you don't have to. My story is, I love the guitar. I started playing guitar to impress a girl. Surprise. And it worked. And we just had our 52nd anniversary. I'm a San Joaquin Valley kid, and when I come up here from Santa Cruz, I feel at home, and it's too hot. So that's why I moved to Santa Cruz. What we are is custom builders. It's real different. I've got great friends in guitar manufacturing. Some of them make up to $1 million a year. And they do a superb service for us because they make an instrument that's affordable. The cheapest guitar, you can write a song and change the world or fall in love, as I talked about. So it's a noble thing to do that. And what they do is they build guitars, hang them in a store, and people can go shop and pick the one that has the most of what they want. Our job's real different. We're working with the customer and building the guitar that has everything they want in one instrument. That would be playability, the sound, both the subjective and the objective. The objective is great, full, rich sound that lasts a long time. The subjective would be anything that you can manipulate on your sound system to get it right for yourself. For instance, in old-style bluegrass, people liked a warm, rounded tone, a big bass, which a classical player or jazz player would hate. They'd want bright, clear, articulate. And so building those in a guitar is something I learned from violin making. When I was playing my first guitar, sitting on my girlfriend's porch waiting for her to come home from school, I was playing and I thought, wow, somebody makes these. I want to do it too. My father was a commercial artist. Back before franchises, he made, when you opened a store, you didn't get signs from the franchise. He made the decorations, the signage and stuff like that, working in metal, plastic, wood, etc. So taking something apart didn't intimidate me. But once I got it apart, my mother, who was a rock star reference librarian, she was actually the Google before computers. You didn't go online, you asked my mom. Said, let's get the books that show you how to put this back together. And fortunately, there was nothing but violins and stories about violins, studies about violins, diaries from the builders. And that's what I cut my teeth on, and it gave me the niche that we're in today. Guitars are a beautiful thing. They're so loud, you can sell them through marketing, right? It's not the quality of sound, it's the presence. And the violin, on the other hand, is a little machine that has to deliver super high fidelity and get it through an orchestra back to a concert hall. So that's what I started with, and I assume that's the way guitars were made, and it gives us our niche in the market today and what we do. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. And again, it's not for braggadocio, it's not to promote a company. What it is to do is to help us understand the nature of great sound that moves us. The Secret of Stradivarius, by the way, instead of making the instrument to a given set of dimensions, they were made to frequencies so that you built the instrument in tune, creating harmony. Harmony gives us sustain, long-lasting sound, and the development of overtones that make it rich and full. And I know this is a bold statement, but science missed that. In trying to duplicate this instrument, they looked at everything they could measure, chemical analysis, duplicating the measurements, using wood from the right places, but they missed it. They missed that these parts were in tune with themselves. And I'll show you in a little bit a demonstration of that and how we work that to do it. I have many friends in mass production, and what they build is guitars. I think I mentioned this before. You can hang in a store and people pick what they want, but to get the shape of the neck, the objective parts, the subjective parts of sound, the instrument would have to be made for you to attain all those. And that's what we do, and it's really unusual. So I'm going to give you a little demo here. A little myth busting. The woods themselves contribute the scale of clarity in an instrument. The warm, dark blended to the bright, clear, and articulate. And depending on your style, you'd choose one of those. This is Adirondack Spruce, which would be really bright and clear. And we've thicknessed this top to 3.2 millimeters. That's not the target. That's what it was when we did everything right to get the tone out of this. And this is going to be for a right-handed player, and we'll hear that here for non-guitar players. The treble strings come in here, high strings, the bass strings come in here. So we're already on the way to controlling the EQ, which is a subjective or personal choice in this. The braces are going to be give the guitar strength to pull the strings, which is maybe 160 pounds, but they're all going to direct this sound to give us the subjective parts. Let's start with EQ, bass to treble. Different styles of playing, you'd want more bass, less bass. And then we're going to tune these braces to get what he talked about before. The brilliance of a beautiful violin is harmony. Harmonicity is a proper acoustic physics word that's in tune with itself, and you get what you need. So you can't do that with dimensions, it has to be tuned. And this one is the before. And again, I'm not dismissing factories. Factories are good, but they can't put this time into it to achieve excellence every time. So this is before. These braces are just glued on and they haven't been tuned. So let's listen to it. Not much. Hear that hollowness and color in that one by accident? There's another nice one. What you're hearing is randomness. If we made 100 guitars exactly like that out of the same wood, they'd be all over the place. One would sound good, one would sound bad. It's very much like throwing rocks at a piano, hoping you get a chord. If you threw enough rocks at a piano, you would get a chord. But in this case, there's some lively ones and some dead ones. The lively ones, those wavelengths happen to move through the rest of the braces, clear and unimpeded, and they sound great. The ones that are dead crash into another wavelength and die. And this is what was missing in the analysis of the violin. So again, I'll do this for you. Pretty good. Pretty good. And let's do an after. And this is tuned unto itself. So overall, and let's do the before again. Pretty cool, huh? It is. That's the secret of Stradivarius. What makes an instrument sound good? Let's start with this. The wood itself is chosen to get the scale of clarity, as I said, depending on your style of playing. But people love old guitars and they love old violins because they sound better. What's that all about? What it is a piece of wood in the living tree. The tree sap flows through the tree to deliver nutrients to the extremities. When it dies, that stops moving and the tree sap begins to polymerize. And I choose that word carefully. I'd rather say crystallize, it's a lot sexier. But polymerize is like glue drying, and it becomes harder and harder and harder. So that piece of wood, given 25 years, 50 years, 100, 200 years, like the old violins, it becomes super hard and resonant, and the instrument sounds better. That's a big deal. Not to dismiss the talents of the master. Not one guy figured out how to make a violin sound good. It goes all the way back to the beginning with the person that first strung a deer sinew on a jawbone, and we've improved ever since. And one of the high points, the School of Amati, like Stradivari, Guarneri, are my heroes, and my study to learn how to add this to guitars. So when we build an instrument, there's not going to be a good one, a bad one by chance. We'll do it on purpose with what you just saw here. So you guys now know more than most guitar makers. So if you'll come visit me, I'll show you how to do the rest, okay? And you can do that. How many guitar players are here? Good. Makers? Wonderful. Well, I got an assignment for you. For the players, think about what you'd like to get. If you could get a custom guitar, you'd like something, but you don't know how to ask for it. So think about that. I'll come back to you later. And for the makers, how do you control and get repeatable success in good sound or the elements that your customer might want in EQ, tone, those kind of things as you go. And we'll both ask that, and I'll hang in the lobby afterwards because I love nothing more than talking about guitars, except when I'm in an auditorium in front of a microphone. So we use woods from all over the world. for their different tonal properties. Remember that scale of clarity? And they all have something in common. They come from small families, not big corporations, and they're all responsibly harvested. I use that umbrella term for trees that have been dead standing, fallen on the forest floor through lightning, windfall, and also trees that have tumbled into a waterway where they're preserved in an anaerobic environment. We get two things with that. We get the polymerization of resins that I talked about earlier, and we don't have to cut a living tree to get it. It's hard for a big company to do that because these sources are kind of specialized. But after 55 years, I've got relationships all over the world where they care as much or more about their resources. I'll give you an example. The Yogi family in India, beautiful principles, spirituality with their connection with their trees and what they do. And they've been in it so long they don't even know how many generations they go back. And they want to do it for generations yet to come. So they're responsibly harvesting. We're getting better sounding wood, and life's good. I got the same thing in Europe with the Florinett family that are the one that do the famous moon spruce. Anybody heard about that? Yeah, a few. I'll debunk this one, or actually I'll amplify it. I don't mind, miss. These are huge old trees, spruce trees that can be like 6 meters, almost 18 feet in diameter. And what they will do is they'll choose a tree solitary. They won't clear cut or cut trees around it, and they'll cut it at the phase of the moon that has the least gravitational pull. And I better explain that. Our ocean, when the moon has the most gravitational pull, it pulls it into a hump, and we have our low tide. When it's at its least, the ocean flattens out, and we have our high tide. So their idea behind this is that these big trees have hydraulic action. When they cut it at the weakest phase of the moon, the water, the resins are in the lower part of the tree. They cut the upper part of the tree, which dries quicker, and the resins polymerize faster. That's some esoteria, but it's cool, huh? And rather than to investigate that science, I just let it be. So again, our business is built on goodwill and relationships. And I hope that'll carry over to generations of the future. Everybody here knows how difficult it is today to get a human on the phone to get something done. It's very efficient. Humans make mistakes. And worse, humans will make compassionate considerations for each other. So you get somebody on the phone, you're hoping you get a nice person that'll help you with your bank account or get your insurance accreditation done. But it's less and less. So what we've found is the nature of the relationships are much more valuable than price or really anything we can come by. And it's truly made me rich. We just suffered through COVID, and without that bank account of goodwill paid forward, there's no way we would have made it. It's a really beautiful thing. The nature of what we do is we sell to music stores. We have to. The music stores that in turn retail them to people, because that distribution chain takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and we'd rather make guitars. So we sell through the stores, but because we guarantee every part of the guitar, including the sound, we have to talk to that customer and make sure that we get them everything they want before we go. So this is, I couldn't begin to tell you how fulfilling it is to do this. And my modest goal is to change the world for the better in what we do. And with this, we get many opportunities to participate in those. I'm going to give a quick plug here. My friends Dave and Melody Murray, as a service mission, went to the Himalayas, northern India, And they got people that are so low caste they don't even have names, they're not allowed names, and most of them turned to drugs. And Dave set up a guitar shop and taught these guys how to make guitars, and they've gained fame all over the world with what they do. Charity's something that you do when nobody's looking. Otherwise, it's marketing, so I won't tell you my part in this. But Adirondack Guitar Company is very worthy, and it's worth checking out. I was able to get some of our wood vendors to participate in what they do, and I hope we can get together and amplify each other's cause in the future. Another project that's dear to my heart is one of my career goals. Now, I should go back one step. When I'm working with a piece of wood, this 3.2 millimeters wasn't the target. It was the result of feeling this wood. And I'm serious, it's this stiffness, this twist. It's what I hear, and explain what I hear, it's the velocity of sound in it. Some styles of music you want slower, some you want faster. It's the development of bass, treble, mid-range. So the idea is you don't choose the best wood for a guitar, use the best wood for the guitar you're making for that customer. And my goal was to put this into a scientific vocabulary and to develop the mechanisms that would measure it, so that we would have a readout of the properties of this wood, and the code to read it, so people making the cheapest guitar could achieve the same success we do in quality of sound. A lot of my friends growing up stopped playing guitar. You know, we all got guitars around 13 years old. The Beatles could have had something to do with that, or the Pretty Girl. A lot of us carried on, a lot of us quit. And two things kept people from pursuing music. One is, if the guitar was hard to play, it took the fun out of it. But more importantly, even to the unsophisticated ear, a guitar that doesn't develop rich, colorful overtones is boring, and it doesn't inspire you. A guitar that is rich, full sounding inspires you to keep it up and try new things. So that's part of my mission, to take this body of knowledge that was heretofore secret with the violin and turn it into something that's accessible. We're all about open source. And it's not, you know, you think like, why would you give away all these hard-won secrets? You can't give anything away. You really can't. You always get back in return. And the beauty of this is what we do is so difficult right now. I've shown people at Yamaha, Takamine, some of the biggest corporations in the world, how we do what we do. And they're like, that's cute. I'm glad we don't have to do it. Everybody's in our consumer world, people are making goods to fit a niche, and oftentimes that's price. The lower the price, the more customers you have, and many people are set up to mass produce and fulfill a really big market. And the instant they begin to add value, they add price, and they limit their scope. So we're safe, you know, we're safe. And again, for makers or players, you know, we're open source, and my goal again is not the glory for Santa Cruz Guitar Company, but to make guitars playing more gratifying, more creative, make more music, and change the world. There you go. So I prepped you for these questions, and nobody wants to ask a question in this context. You're afraid to be silly. But there's a lot of mythology in guitars, guitar making, and so forth. And my promise to you is I'll stick to physics or proven scientific inquiry that arrives at a repeatable conclusion. If I do want to give you an opinion, I'll warn you first, right? So you may want to ask questions about a lot of the mythology in guitar building. How many grains per inch? Is quarter sawn important? Does a cutaway make a difference? Should I get torrefied wood, which is, by the way, an artificial way to make wood sound older? Anybody got a burning one? Please, baby, please. Sure.
So you actually made me a guitar in 2020, and when I went down to the shop, there are things that I had read or been told, because I strum, you can't get a small body guitar. I can't get a Redwood guitar. And I remember we talked about it. It made me a beautiful instrument. But I think you did some research on Redwood. I was wondering if you could maybe talk about why that's not as limited as people say that it is.
I will. Redwood is, it's a glorious tree. It's a glorious environment. Everything about it is really moving. And our Aboriginal people, both cedar and redwood, they saw as a representation of the power of the Creator. They didn't worship trees, they weren't stupid, but they held them in reverence for what they represented. The redwood tree can regenerate after fire, it can be hit by lightning, grow again, and the seed cones don't expel their seeds until they're super hot. They've gone through a forest fire. So redwood's relatively new to our vocabulary in guitar building. And I'll use cedar as an example. Cedar was introduced into the classical tradition, 500 years of modern, that's oxymoron, of classical building. And when Ramirez introduced cedar in a classical guitar, it was like, wow, it's loud, it's rich, it's full. Why did we overlook this? But the contemporaries, the guitar building there is pretty macho, male-dominated, and so the rumors were, it doesn't have a very long tonal life. It won't last very long, and you can overdrive it if you hit it too hard. Well, we hear the same things about redwood today, 75 years later. And we do a modal analysis. That's a way to take a piece of wood and capture its properties. And this isn't guitar making stuff. This is a cooperation with Stanford University, the Naval Postgraduate School, and acoustic physics to really nail what I do when I twist and tap and turn. And redwood has the broadest range of properties for different styles of playing an acoustic guitar. Let me be careful here. It's not that a piece of redwood has this range. It's in redwood, you'll find a piece that will replace Adirondack spruce, Sitka spruce, European spruce. And if you treat it right and you measure it right as you go, which is part of what we do. So I got a thing for redwood. I can go through the forest and never look at the tree like it has dotted lines for cutting boards out and so forth. I love the whole thing about it. I love the history and the mystery, and we spend a lot of energy to protect our resources in that. But it's an excellent wood. If treated intelligently, it can go on most any guitar with super results. Thanks for letting me pitch that. Yes, sir.
Speaking of that, with redwoods, how do they work out for solid body?
I do have a good friend, Nick Hoover, in Germany. In fact, we're cousins. I'm Hoover, O-O, he's Hoover, U-B. And if you go back far enough, it meant, it either meant poacher or forester, depending on whose side you were on. Way back when, to feed your family, everything belonged to the king, right? So you're a poacher. But we're cousins, and I love him, and he's done a lot. We've been able to get him curly redwood, which, by the way, don't put curly redwood on an acoustic top unless you talk to me first, because it'll pull apart. And Nick's loved it. Now, I don't make electrics. I don't even know what questions to ask, but there are certain properties you're looking for. And what I just described is we can do this modal analysis and pick a piece that's right for what you want to do. So, holler. Do you live up here?
I live here and I live in Boulder Creek.
Well, that's easy. Just take off the handbrake and come on down.
2 of my friends work for you already.
Oh, sheesh. Small world. Yeah, yeah.
Teddy and Dylan.
Oh, that's wonderful. Small world, huh?
Yep.
And a beautiful world also. Another burning one? Yes, sir.
So I store my guitars out and hang them on the wall.
Yeah.
Because I think they're beautiful. It'll inspire me to play them more. And another reason is I think it'll accelerate that polymer process you were talking about. Is that true?
Oh, this is beautiful. How's my time, Josh?
10 minutes?
Okay. Here's the science. And again, I'll warn you if it's opinion. Here's the science. The things that make older guitars sound better, and a big part is that polymerization of the resins, makes the resonance harder and more resonant. Simple. And the longer it goes, the better it is. But there's 2 more. One is that when an instrument's made, you're going to create some tension. If you're building like us, you can be really careful to minimize that tension. But if you're looking for price, you can build a guitar with UV cured glues and finishes and stuff in like a few hours. And get them really cheap. But obviously you're building a lot of tension in when you do that. And those guitars will take a long time to relax, if ever, right, into a fully resonant instrument. Whereas instruments been around 40, 50, 70, 100 years would have relaxed and worked that out. And steel string guitars often at the expense of the neck angle, but still it relax and sound better. So there's 2. The resins get harder, the guitar is a relaxed assembly. It's not an opera singer with a tight belt. The last one is the one that you're talking about, and everybody's heard folklore about when you're at work, put your guitar in front of the speaker and blast it, you come home. There's some truth to that, but we should be careful to identify it. The top itself has a natural frequency when you tap on it, and so does the airspace in the guitar. And if you excite either of those, you'll get a de-damping effect. And I use that. De-damping comes from the French violin school. And de-damping is the opposite of, you play a bell, you put your finger on it, dampens it. It's like letting loose and letting it ring. And an apprentice in, I don't know if they were after school or if they were indentured, but might sit there with a guitar, violin plate and just flex it over and over and over and over again, and not break the fibers, but get a flexibility to it. And that's the de-damping. So you can do that with sound, and maybe you've heard some products that you hook onto the guitar and they kind of hum like an aquarium pump. I'm not patient enough for that. What you would do is, if you took I was going to say Radio Shack, that doesn't exist anymore, but if you went to Radio Shack or whatever and got a little motor with off-center weight, anything that vibrates, that's what it is. It's a little motor, but you have a weight off-center, so it goes go-wog, 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 and hook up a toy train transformer, which is really a frequency generator. And you would say put the motor on your bridge with the strings with a cable tie, and you turn your transformer until it just howls. Right, a lot of product liability there, right? But it just howls, and that will give you results. But the stiffer the guitar is to start with, the more dramatic. The better the guitar, the less effective that will be. But you can do it. And I've often thought about, wouldn't that be a nice product? And I went, no, yeah, too much liability. So there's the 3 things that contribute to a guitar sounding better. So the speaker is like only the frequencies that move it, the airspace and the top are effective. The rest of them are ineffective. So sitting on a stand in itself, I don't know. Some things, anything you do, I would say, will affect the sound, but it's, how much of it can you hear? So that's actually intriguing. I'll find out for next time. Good. Yes, sir.
Gentleman up here mentioned going in and getting a guitar and stating that he's a strummer, so you build something
Yeah.
for strummers. I tend to do more single note lines.
Yeah.
How do you approach differences in building for somebody who's doing more single note lines versus strumming?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
How do you approach building differently?
Oh, I got you. Okay, well, one is clarity, warm, blended, singer-songwriter, rhythm. There's bright, clear, articulate. Somebody that wants you to hear every note you play separately and all the nuance you put into it. And that comes from the woods. Really, is choosing the woods that have that scale of clarity for you. Another one would be the EQ, manipulating the EQ on the guitar, which is really different. There's tone scale, and then there's bass to treble to do that. And you may find that you'd want a guitar that wasn't really big and bassy like a dreadnought. You might want it more even. So those are the two things we control. But there's one other tantalizing thing here, and that's presence. When you play a guitar like ringing a bell, the sound goes everywhere. But you can direct it. And the best trick is, think of an old archtop jazz guitar in a big band. Like a violin, nobody cares what it sounds like behind it. It's got so much work to project through the orchestra. And it did it by making a super massive neck, like maple neck, big silly peg head, heavy gears, that blocks vibration from chimneying into it and gives more projection. But that's not always desirable. Think of the Christie minstrels sitting on a stool, singing folk songs, slotted peg head, open back gears. The neck becomes part of the resonant surface, and it's more open and airy and kind of more friendly, right? So you can control those things in the build. And that's one of the things I spend my life doing, is talking to people. Now, by the way, nobody knows what to ask for in the sound of a custom guitar. We're not acoustic physicists. We don't have a common language, but by hearing what people play, knowing what their influences are, what they like and they don't like in a guitar, we know how to get you what you want. And I'm trying to tell the rest of the world how to do that too. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and I think of James Nash when he's playing his single, and some beautiful guitars you built for him, and great sounds coming out.
What a player. And he and Tony Rice both can get away with super low action because they're not doing this to get volume. They're counting on their Neumann microphone, and they play pretty delicately to do that. And that's how they can control the tone. Yes, sir.
Well, you made mention of cutaway and what that
does
to the tone of the guitar.
Yeah. Here's something interesting. I showed you this tuned top, and undoubtedly sounded way better. It's sustained, it was rich and full and colorful. We do a secondary tuning, and if you don't do that, you waste your time on the first one. And what that is when the guitar is a body, you've created a new note, and that's the airspace. So here we put, we've tuned all these braces into harmony, like a chord, and then you put it on a guitar, and there's a new note, the airspace. And it's like, this is a beautiful chord. This is the little kid that walks up behind you and bangs the piano on a random key. This note happens to us because we're not machinists, we're woodworkers, right? So we can't control that, but we have to bring them into harmony or we wouldn't get what we want. So this is a head twister. These braces are already in harmony. We don't want to touch them. The airspace is fixed. We can't change that. So what we do is when we bound the guitar, we're going to have scratches, pencil lines, etc. We're going to sand those off, and as we make this more flexible, flexibility makes frequencies lower, and we lower all of these in unison. They stay in tune, and they drop down, and we stop when it matches that note. Ay, ay, ay. I hope you could follow that. But if you don't do that, you wasted your time on the voicing and tuning of the top to start with. And is that anything like an answer for your question?
No, the cutaway on the
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. So the cutaway we can compensate for. Now a cutaway takes out airspace, which would lower volume and reduce bass. But when you do that secondary tuning, you could make up for it. Also, we have tricks. We can build the body like a 1/8 to 1/4 inch deeper and regain that airspace when we do it, which is very cool to do. Now, here's something. I'm talking about the Venetian or the rounded cutaway. That takes out the negative airspace that you cut out for the cutaway, but air still moves in that round part. If you do a Venetian cutaway with a point, you double the airspace that you take out. Something to think about. So we don't do pointy cutaways. It's a religious thing. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, about 30 years ago, I was fortunate enough to buy a guitar that I love even today. I play the same guitar today. The reason I play it is because it's so easy to play.
Yeah.
And in the abstract, you would think a guitar is nothing, you know, it's a string strummed between 2 points. I can sit in any commercial guitar center and look at hundreds of guitars and not find one that plays as nicely as mine.
Yeah.
Why are there so few guitars that are...
How come, yeah. And no matter how expensive, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
$3,000 guitars and they're... You have to
So, again, we're going to go into physics here. You'd think if you fix the string at this point and this point, it would move in a long ellipse, right? So the adjustable truss rod would let you do that curve. So you get the strings closer to the board to play without it rattling where it moves the most. But the string doesn't move that way. When you pluck the string here, it echoes up here, and it settles into a crazy shape that's predictable, whether it's this long or a mile long. And the way you can get the lowest possible action to feel as good as yours does is the fretboard has to be shaped in that geometry of the string. If it's flat or just flat and curved, it'll rattle in different places, and you have to raise the strings higher to get rid of that rattle. And we use the pluck machine, which is a way to scan the board in 1/10 of a thousandth of an inch, see that magnified, and shape the board in that and get low action every time. So the low action is a combination of things, but that's basically it. If the fretboard's not in the right shape, you have to go too high. And when your action's high, it's unpleasant to press down, and the further you press the string, the sharper it becomes. So it's out of tune, hard to play. Oh boy. Yes, sir.
Do you think under-saddle transducers affect the unplugged tone of an acoustic guitar, given that they're right there in the
I do.
drivetrain?
I do, but not in a don't do it way. The transducer, of course, would have ability to absorb some sound. Let's transfer the string energy. But depending on what it's made of and how well it fits, it's another thing. Can you hear it? I've done tests where I couldn't hear it. I've done tests where I could. And I think it's a matter of how well it fits and the material it's made out of. It's not my favorite because it's hard to do and hard to control that variable. But in itself, like a company like LR Baggs has done millions of dollars in true science and research on those things to try to get the best possible transfer of sound. But it's like raising your action by putting a piece of playing card or a cigarette paper wrapper or something like that. It's not going to do any favors, but maybe you won't hear it, right? Yes, sir.
Speaking of fretboards, years ago there was a ban on Rosewood.
Yeah.
Rosewood, and I think that the last time now the government is allowing you to harvest that. Are you having issues with that? Are you able to get good rosewood anymore? I know a lot of guitar companies are going to Indian laurel and...
For big companies, it's not practical. But for us, we've used Brazilian rosewood, everything. Understand that the regulations, the certification and so forth are to save a resource that is being used up, right? There's industries overseas that will vacuum that stuff up, any kind of rosewood, right? So it's actually not true that rosewood was never illegal. You just had to do it right. What we have is we have Brazilian rosewood that was cut from the remainder of trees that were cut 100 years ago. Not the stumps, but the remainder of the tree trunk, because people used a two-person saw standing here, and the remainder was before chainsaws. That's the only choice you had. So we're able to reclaim from that, and being reclaimed, not coming from a living tree, we could get the documentation that allowed us to use it. So the fear-mongering that we all heard, oof, do I want to be careful? Nah, I don't. There was a company that got caught trying to launder illegal import by sending it through Germany and back into the US. And they were observed on the ground. They were met by the same people that meet you if you did that with cocaine, child labor, military weapons. And there was a lot of misinformation that went out about how they were going to take your guitar at the border and so forth. I used to ask this question in audiences like, has anybody ever, first person, had their guitar confiscated at the border? Not a friend, you know, not a story, and I've yet to find anybody that had. Cool, huh? So you want to take precautions, but we can get Brazilian. But remember, my dear friends at Taylor, when life is good, can make 1,000 guitars a day. And we do the same. It just takes us 5 years. So we can use specialized woods. We can do it right. And, I work with some beautiful people, and I would never, ever, ever put them in harm's way by having them not tell the truth. So we do it straight and above board, and we have great relationship with CITES, Fish and Wildlife. And it's really not that difficult. It's just a lot of administrative drudgery to get it through. And there are alternatives. Mahogany, rosewood, maple maybe were the traditional woods, because way back in, that was the trees that grew in the backyard of Martin and Gibson. And they used them, except for the rosewood. As times have changed, it's our goal to introduce alternative woods that are just as good, but it's like introducing a new brand. You like that? Okay. I had somebody else I lost. There we go. Thank you.
Along that same thought process, what's your take on using veneer over plywoods and
a solid versus plywood? Well, I was just talking to Josh about this, some research I'd sure like to do. There's really credible and famous classical builders that laminate their sides because they believe the stiffness of the sides keeps them from absorbing energy, and you get more projection. Where laminate would have no place is in the top. The top is like, the sides and back are like the speaker cabinet. The top is like the speaker cone. It has to be light, strong, homogeneous to be able to project sound. And a plywood is usually grain this way, grain that way, grain this way, and it'd be way too stiff to produce good sound. It's a neat alternative to real wood, but it's not practical for great sound. Yes?
How did Adirondack Spruce get its reputation as being, among some people, sort of a premier wood?
There's trends that go with wood. As a builder, I didn't even know about Adirondack till I was in it for 10 years. And Adirondack is like a color or flavor on the scale. Remember, it's the scale of clarity. So Sitka spruce being towards the warmest, Adirondack and some Europeans towards the brightest and clearest. So better or worse? Absolutely not. It's like a flavor or color. There's something right for you. And Adirondack got its panache because that's what Martin and Gibson used back in the old days, and you can't get it anymore. So rarity increases desirability, which increases usage, which makes it more rare, and you go through that cycle a few times. So it's expensive. There's a few reasons for that. There was there was bugs, deforestation, and so forth that made it more and more rare. But Adirondack is not better or worse. In fact, some people would find it really undesirable in their style of playing. But it will give you a clarity I'm thinking of our players. We mentioned James Nash a minute ago, Eric Sky. They play all over the fingerboard. They want it really precise, and they want one note to fall away so they can play with the next. And Adirondack does that well. So does Italian spruce. I'd say, in a species, there's a lot of variety, and you could find Italian spruce and Adirondack you couldn't tell apart. So it's what makes anything famous. Rarity is one, celebrity association is another one. And in this case, old Martins and old Gibsons, which are desirable for the reasons I talked about before. They're old guitars. Here's another one that's great in the vintage trade, natural selection. I've had the pleasure of playing like several 1934 D28s at once. So if a guitar plays well and sounds good, somebody plays it, right? If it doesn't, it goes in the closet, kids play with it, it goes out of orbit, gets sold at a flea market. So really we're seeing the best of the best now of those guitars. All of them weren't spectacular. Well, that's good. That's everything I know. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to hang in the lobby a little bit, and it's you that have allowed me to have a really fulfilling livelihood and fulfill the mission I'm on, both as a human being, my ethics, my faith, and I couldn't be happier. Thanks for what you do, and big love to you and yours. I hope everything goes your way.